How you doing, everyone? Welcome to the next episode of Coffee with Colin. I'm your host, Colin Egglesfield, and this is my guest tonight, Mr. Marcus Velazquez. So Marcus has done something that I hope to do. So when I grow up one day, I can't wait to do what Marcus has been brave enough to do. Marcus has been practicing and essentially coaching in the field of communication for how long?
Or probably my entire life. Yeah,
Okay.
I would say a solid 18 years.
Okay. So Marcus has done a TED Talk. It is called
The Art of Effective Communication.
All right. And so for those of you out there who, if you're like me, struggled with having confidence when I was communicating in school and giving presentations, growing up, I was very nervous being in front of audiences and just even standing up in class to give the answer to a question. And through my journey of becoming an actor, I've worked with a ton of coaches and have done quite a bit of personal and professional development to overcome my fear of speaking in front of audiences. And speaking in front of audiences, public speaking, it affects quite a bit of the population.
As far as I know, it's the number one fear, public speaking.
Yeah. And so I wanted to chat with Marcus, essentially to have him share with us some insight and techniques on how to communicate more effectively and with more confidence. So welcome again. It's been a few weeks since we've been broadcasting. And as you can see, I'm in studio with Marcus here in Chicago. And on the right-hand side of your screen here, or whatever platform you're watching, you can type in questions that you may have for Marcus, and you can actually watch his TED Talk you go to YouTube, or TED has its actual app that you can go to. And I've watched it a couple of times now, a lot of really great insight in there. And Marcus also has a course called?
The course is called Talk Your Way to Effective Communication, and TALK is an acronym. It stands for Tell It Simply, Ask Questions, Listen, and Know Thyself. And that's kind of the four tenets, if you would say, that I teach communication training by.
Awesome. So we've got plenty of folks here. We've got Tamia, we've got Cornelia, Sandrine, Angie, Zam, Tanya, Kim. Thank you for joining me. And again, if you have any questions for us throughout the evening, we'd love for you to type in the chat here. Also, if you are on YouTube, feel free to subscribe so you don't miss another episode of Coffee with Colin. And of course, at the very end, we are going to be asking Marcus what his favorite movies are, his particular pick six. And without further ado, let's jump right into sharing some insight on how to communicate more effectively.
Absolutely.
So let's just step back and get to know you a little bit, Marcus. Where are you from? And if you could tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into this whole field of being a communications consultant.
Yeah, absolutely. So born and raised in Chicago. I've been here all my life, except for about 3.5 years. I lived in Oakland, California while I was attending school. But Chicago born and raised, so shout out to any Chicagoans out there. My story, man, a lot of growth, a lot of getting to know myself. I feel like if we don't get to know ourselves fully and constantly seek betterment and empowerment, that to me that's the secret of life right there. It's like, the better we are, the better we are for the world. And that's been my focus. Is I love helping people, but I also want to be the best version of me. I've learned that I can actually help more people by showing them what to do as opposed to telling them what to do. Mm-hmm. And that's been awesome. Yeah. So I have an interesting history when it comes to communication. It's a very non-traditional route, but I am a Christian. And when the churches that I've attended, I've been very heavy into, it's called street ministry, street evangelizing, literally on the streets, talking to people on the corners. We'll set up speakers sometimes and street preach. So what I've learned, I've done that for 18 years, and I've literally talked to thousands of people from different walks of life. Mm-hmm. I've been here in Chicago, California, New Orleans, literally thousands of people, I kid you not, and different ages, different backgrounds, different demographics. So my training has just been having a lot of conversations and having it's a lot of trial and error. I've made tons of mistakes. That's how I learned. I learned to, shouldn't have done that. Like I remember specifically, I had a conversation with a guy one time. I assumed something about him. It was completely wrong. And he got turned off from that conversation right there. So one of the things I teach, don't make assumptions, because I did that and learned the hard way. But yeah, I've just talked to a lot of people. I've learned the power of listening, which in my opinion is the most important part of communication. But little nuances like, making eye contact, nodding, showing people that you're engaged, sharing the space, letting the other person talk instead of dominating and controlling everything.
Yeah.
Being okay with silence, that is a big one, because some people, silence will scare them. If you are out there, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, communication affects so much, not only our relationships personally with, husbands and wives, family, friends, also our businesses and our professional life. If there are any entrepreneurs out there, you own a business or you're working at a company, you want to move on up, communication skills are essential. And we literally communicate every single day. And at minimum, we actually communicate with ourselves. And that's a huge perspective to remember too, because how you talk to yourself matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the times we are not consciously aware of the thoughts that keep running around in our head. And that's what I like to help people become aware of is, what are those thoughts? What are those predominant belief systems that we have, that we've acquired just by the happenstance of where we were born, how we were raised, what religion we grew up practicing, what school we went to, and all of this stuff has an effect on what comes out of our mouth. And without even really recognizing or knowing this stuff, I wasn't really aware of this stuff until I jumped into my acting class at 24 years old. And when my acting teacher started talking about things like subtext and multi-layers of communication, a lot of this stuff was just like, this is so foreign to me. But after going through my acting classes, I realized that this is so important for anyone and everyone to be able to learn in order to be able to communicate and be able to connect on a deeper level. Because I think that's what's really missing, especially nowadays in the world, is the deeper connection and the ability, like you were saying, to actively listen to someone. I see a lot of people getting triggered, a lot of people being upset just by two people or groups of people trying to have a conversation, especially when it comes to politics or religion. It can really trigger people to the point where it gets heated. And a lot of the things that I've learned from my acting classes are just recognizing some of these triggers, recognizing some strategies and insights on how to be able to understand who you're speaking to. And we're going to get into this because this is what you talked about in your TED Talk, which is knowing your audience, and knowing the listening that you are speaking into. So did you grow up in a family where were your parents preachers? Was this something that you grew up doing? Or because I grew up an introvert, my inclination was to hide up in my bedroom, build model airplanes, and just not get up in front of audiences. What was your personality like growing up as a kid?
So I'm an introvert as well. I refer to myself more like an ambivert, which is like right in the middle.
Yeah.
So it really depends on how I'm feeling, the audience I'm around, people.
Yeah.
For the most part, I am an introvert. After I'll do something on stage, I'll need to retreat, be by myself for a little bit and gather myself and get my energy back up. But yeah, honestly, even to this day, getting on stages, I'll still be a little nervous. I don't think that ever goes away, at least not for myself. And that's okay for it not to go away. To me, that means you're involved, you're excited, you're a little nervous, like all the fun stuff that comes with public speaking.
Did it ever get debilitating where it was hard to breathe, and where it was like actually prohibiting you from actually being able to get up in front of people? Because I remember a lot of times getting up and just my chest getting so tight that it was hard to breathe, and then the sweat from the armpits. And I've told this story plenty of times from my auditions. I would have to bring 3 shirts to my auditions.
Holy cow.
I would wear one shirt, wear it to the audition, and then once I got to the audition, I'd go into the bathroom, change into the shirt that I was auditioning with, because the first one would have been sweated through. And then after the audition, I would go back into the bathroom, change into my 3rd shirt, because that shirt that I used in the audition was sweated through. So it just got to a point where I knew I needed to do something about this if I really was going to pursue on my goal of becoming a professional actor.
Yeah.
So has it ever been that bad for you? And what do you do to like physically prepare yourself to get up in front of audiences?
Yeah. Like anything, the more you do it, the better you get at it. So now I'm extremely comfortable on stages. I don't have to prepare too much. But yeah, I have anxiety, and there have been a lot of times where it kicks in. People may not see it outwardly. One of my biggest things that not a lot of people know, and if you struggle with anxiety, you might do this. I actually curl my toes in my shoes.
Okay.
And that like helps me put pressure on myself, and like helps soothe the anxiety for that moment. So nobody can see me curling my toes in my shoe, but it's happening. It's happened less and less throughout the years, but that was a big tactic for me, like just holding on to that pressure. So.
Another tip is, this may sound a little vulgar, but legit, this works. Clenching your butt cheeks. I swear to God. I mean, it may sound a little like weird, but so two insights so far: curling your toes, clenching your butt cheeks. Okay, it actually makes you stand up even taller by doing that.
Nice.
So what else do you do or did you do to prepare?
I will honestly say, especially when it comes to the fear of public speaking, you need to find something that motivates you greater than fear. Because that doesn't mean that the fear goes away. And that's what it was for me, is that the fear was still alive and well, but the act of sharing certain information was more important than the fear, and helped me to push through that fear. So it wasn't like, I have no more fear, I'm invincible. It's just, no, I found things that are more powerful than the fear, which is usually love, sharing information, wanting to help other people. And if I don't say something, this might be the only opportunity that this person has to hear this information. So just open my mouth and get over it. That's it.
Yeah. And so growing up, was this like being up in front of stages something that you envisioned from an early age that you wanted to do?
Honestly, no. My first introduction to a larger stage, I was raised Catholic. I remember, I think it was in first grade, and I did like a all school mass reading. So like I read a scripture in front of like hundreds of kids, and that was like my first intro to public speaking. I also remember when my voice started changing. And I had a religion teacher. His name is Mr. Brailer. I'll never forget him. And my voice kind of matched his as far as depth.
Okay.
So I felt I wanted to share my voice with everybody. So that was a big thing for me. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
How old were you when your voice changed?
Yikes, probably 7th or 8th grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like 26. So, so you've got a pretty big chest. So, and I'm not sure if you guys can tell, but Marcus has a very deep, strong resonance to his voice. And this is something that we talk about in my acting class, in my communications class that I teach, is getting in touch with drawing your awareness down from your analytical part of your brain down into your heart center and down into your chest. And we do a lot of warm-up exercises. So important that when you are about to get up on stage, whether that's in front of an audience or in front of the camera, we would do a ton of warm-up exercises in acting class just to get you into your body. That's one of the most important things you can do, is just to get present and be connected to your body, because a lot of the times we walk around just disconnected from our body just because we're in our head a lot of the day with regards to thinking about what we need to do that day, the things that we've got to remember, the things that we didn't do, our to-do list, and very little time in our days actually spent in the present moment. So this may actually take a little practice to be just in the moment and doing some just presencing, where you're just actually, what Matthew McConaughey does before his scenes, he actually will sit in the corner and pound on his chest. And I've mentioned this before, but that's how, if you ever watch Wolf of Wall Street, the movie, Martin Scorsese saw Matthew doing this in the corner as he was warming up. And Martin asked him what he was doing. And he said, this is me getting connected to my body before I get in front of the camera.
Wow.
And it helps you bring your awareness, draws your awareness down into your head, because there's no way that you can connect effectively with just your thoughts. We connect here with our heart. I like to call it our heart center. And so when I talk about communicating effectively, I like to talk about being fully integrated, mind, body, and spirit with communication. And Marcus has actually come up with a little acronym for the way in which you teach effective communication. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what the TALK in talk is?
Yeah, so T stands for tell it simply. I believe in simple communication. You don't have to give too many adjectives, too much information. Just get to the point and move on. A stands for ask questions. That means getting to know your audience, because every audience is different. You may share the same information with people, but depending on the audience will determine how you share that information. And you have to take that into account, because if your goal as a communicator is to make sure they receive your message, and anything that hinders that needs to be removed. So knowing your audience is like, okay, well, what if this particular audience is auditory and they need some kind of auditory stimulation? They're visual. Put together a presentation. You have to know what they need in particular. The L in talk stands for listen, which again, in my opinion, is the most important part of communication, and it is very often overlooked. Honestly, one of the best ways you can show someone respect is by listening to them. And one of the best ways to disrespect someone is not listening to them.
And interrupt.
That's right. That's right. And then lastly, the K in talk stands for know thyself. To me, this is probably the secondary most important part of communication, because it's not so much what I call attacking the symptoms. I focus on healing the disease. And what I mean by that is a lot of people will focus on the symptoms of, as a prime example, I talk too much. The solution isn't talk less. The solution is, why do you talk so much in the first place? Now we're digging deep. You get to know yourself. So again, if you want to be an effective communicator, you have to ask the tough questions. You have to know yourself, because what's inside you comes out of your mouth. And if you don't like what's coming out, you need to focus on what's inside. So yeah, knowing yourself, knowing why you say what you say, is your communication more about yourself than for your audience? Do you just like the sound of your own voice? Are you speaking because you want a pat on the back and you want everyone to know how knowledgeable you are? You have to know yourself, because you are present in every single thing you do when you communicate.
What is your favorite thing about getting up in front of audiences and connecting with them?
The first thing that pops to mind is influence. I have been blessed with a lot of influence with people, and I want to use it for the greater good. Being on a stage, as you know, there's a lot of power there. And literally, the fact in certain stages when you're elevated above people, they're forced to look up to you. When you have a microphone, you are the loudest thing in the room and you dominate everyone else. So you have that, honestly, authority over people in that moment. And it's up to us to see and figure out how we want to use that authority and influence over people. So that's what I personally love. Of course, I take it very seriously. When I'm influencing people, I want to make sure I'm influencing them in the right directions. But that's what I love personally, is being able to speak into people's lives, knowing that they're taking my words very seriously right now, and I have the power to uplift someone in that moment.
Who would you say has been your biggest influence, or what has been your biggest experience that's been the biggest influence in you becoming an effective speaker?
Firstly, I'll go back to what I said about the street ministry and talking to a lot of people. But I'm also a musician. I've been a hip hop artist for 18 years. I've headlined some of Chicago's biggest venues. Just want to throw that out there. Cubby Bear twice, which is right across the street from Wrigleyville. The Metro, HVAC Pub. But that experience being in front of people as well, I've performed in front of thousands of people. Again, going back to that influence. I personally feel there's even more influence when you get music involved, because then you start, people start literally vibing with you, and the music just draws people in. It's a great
example of when you're connecting with an audience energetically. It's not just the words in the song, it's the music, it's the rhythm, it's you up on stage. I'm sure, you're in your body and you're moving around.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a connection between the audience, and literally, like, if I tell someone to put their hands in the air, the majority of the crowd is going to put their hands in the air. So I love that. Again, for me, it's just having fun. I love being a musician, creating music, but there is a very genuine connection with people when you're on stage, and it's a lot of fun.
Do you have a musician name? Is it different than?
Yes. Well, it's my first and middle name. It's Marcus Alexander.
Okay.
So I'm on all streaming platforms, Marcus Alexander. But yeah, my music has changed a lot throughout the years. But yes, big fan. And again, same thing. I utilize my influence in music for the greater good. I understand that music can be very influential, both good and bad. So I want to make sure that I'm utilizing, music to the best of my ability, while again sharing my life story, sharing the ups and downs, things I've gone through, the ways I've grown, the life lessons I've learned, and whoever it speaks to, it speaks to.
And so I know a lot of you out there have something to say. You've got a message that you want to get out there. You may want to, maybe it's in writing form, maybe it is actually getting up in front of audiences or being in front of the camera. And Marcus has put together this course. I've put together a course, and there's usually a bridge between where you are at and where you want to go. And a lot of the times, people don't know where to start to even get started to do something like this. So if anyone is interested in actually putting together their own course, the digital marketing space is so massive nowadays.
Yes.
And it's only continuing to grow. Traditional education is starting to look a little less appealing to a lot of people.
Yep.
A lot of it has to do with the cost of education nowadays. So a lot of people are turning to the internet for learning how to do stuff. And if you're interested in creating a course to make some side income, can you tell us what your experience was like putting together your course for someone maybe out there who's looking to maybe has an idea about putting together a course? I mean, you can put a course together for anything. Teaching people how to sew, teaching people how to do a friend who makes flower crowns. You could put together a course about anything.
Bake cookies.
And basically put it up on a platform and then start doing some social media around it. What was that experience like for you putting your course together? And what can you share with my audience about how to get started if they want to put together a course?
Yeah. There was a lot of work into that course. Let me say that. If you're going to do it right, it's going to take some time and energy. My very first step before even turning on a camera was writing the script for the course. And the best writing is rewriting. So it literally took me upwards of an entire year to finalize my script. So that's why I'm very proud of my course, because I know the labor of love that I put into it. But yeah, firstly was the script. So I literally just reread and reread. Oh, I like this. I don't like that. Let me change these sentences, move it around. And finally, once my script was at a great place where I was fully confident in it, that's when I began the actual planning of the filming. I don't like to play around, especially when it comes to money. So if I'm renting a location and they're charging me by the hour, I am not there to play. So I go there with a game plan. So I filmed my course over 3 weekends. Like Colin said, I'm here in Chicago, so I rented out a few locations. A great resource for that, by the way, is a website called Peerspace. And they have tons of venues where people will let you rent by the hour, and really nice places.
Is that nationwide?
I believe so. Yeah. Peerspace. Yeah. So what I did as well, because again, if you're going to communicate a message, you have to consider who you're talking to and give them the information the best way that they will receive it. At the end of the day, communication has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with your audience. So I had to think of my audience. Well, if I'm going to create a course, I'm not just going to have a camera on me for hours at a time. No one wants to stare at me for several hours at a time. So what can I do to spice things up visually? So I hired some actors and actresses, and we filmed a bunch of B-roll footage of people having conversations. So this way, as I'm speaking, we're slicing in B-roll. You're keeping people visually engaged. I have captions showing up on the bottom of the screen, again, to emphasize certain points, but to keep people's attention. I also wrote several skits in my training as well, so that people will leave the course with actual practice of the elements that I'm teaching. So things like tone of voice. I have a skit on tone of voice, facial expressions, body language, listening skills. So I wanted it to be interactive. Again, especially for a course like this, I had to consider a general audience. So I wanted to make sure there was the visual component, there's music in there as well, there's text on the screen that people want to read. So it was a lot of work. Yeah. And I love it though. I'm super proud of it. It was a labor of love. By far, it was the biggest undertaking I've done and seen to completion. But yeah, I mean, like I said, anybody can do it. Literally, if you want to use your cell phone, you can. If you want to hire a professional film crew like I did, because I wanted to make sure it came across crispy, you can do that as well. But yeah, the availability of websites out there for you to upload your own materials is amazing. And if you want to do a course, take full advantage of it.
Yeah. And it took you a year. It took me, I'd say it was a good, it took me it was like 9 months to write my book. And then basically I took a lot of what I write in my book and turned it into these modules for my course. And I worked with a company that it's called Thrive, where they helped me break down my modules, bullet pointed them, and then I actually flew out to Oakland, California to their studios, where they had the 2 cameras set up and just obviously add that more professional element to it. But any time we embark on something that is an endeavor that we know it's going to take quite a bit of time, it can be daunting. It can almost feel like, yes, this is something that I really want to do, but I don't even know maybe how to start. I don't know how long it's going to take. What advice would you give for someone who's wanting to do something like this, but maybe having these feelings of like, well, this just seems too big? And did you ever get to a point in that year where you were like, all right, this is just, I want to I bang my head against the wall.
Yes.
And what kept you going? Because I like to share with my audience, and this is what I talk about. One of my keynote speeches is about resiliency, and how do we stay connected to our goal? How do we stay motivated and inspired to fulfill completing some of the things that we start?
Yeah. There's a famous quote that says, begin with the end in mind. I forget who said it. I want to say Zig Ziglar. I'm not sure. But that's what I would say. Begin with the end in mind, meaning what is your end goal going to look like? What is your life going to look like with this final product? How are you going to feel? You're going to feel accomplished. How are others going to receive a product that you spent so much time and love and effort into? What is this product going to bring you? It's going to bring you satisfaction. It's going to bring you a stream of income. It's going to give you something of value that you were able to give to the world. There's a lot of people that leave this world with a lot of their dreams unmet and unfulfilled. Mm-hmm. So imagine what that's like at the end of the day, saying, man, it was worth it. I put in the work. I put in the effort. Here it is. Here's my baby. I'm here to share it with the world. So definitely that'll keep you motivated, because if you focus on every little single step, it is daunting. It is very discouraging. It's really easy to want to quit. Personally, I won't lie. I probably quit like 20 times a day. But when I quit, it's for 30 seconds, 45 seconds. And then, I pick myself up by my bootstraps and keep moving forward. So, but yeah, begin with the end in mind. Focus on what life is going to be like with your final product finished, mm-hmm. and what your life will look like, and write that down. Let it be on a vision board if you want, but use that as your motivation.
So I'm sure you've heard the quote, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. Yep. And so I'm right now putting together a complementary planner to my book, Agile Artist. It's called the Agile Artist 90-Day Manifestation Planner. And in there, I talk about chunking. And this is something that I learned from Tony Robbins, where you take a bigger project and you chunk it into smaller bite-sized chunks for you to be able to then put into your calendar. So you have a schedule in there. So you're essentially eliminating the emotional decision-making, mm-hmm. about, well, I don't feel like doing it today. Yeah. Where it doesn't become, your life isn't contingent on the decisions you make based on your feelings. Your decisions are made based on who you say that you are and what you commit yourself to accomplishing.
Yeah. You also, anytime you're going to start a project, a big goal, write it out. Write out mm-hmm. every single step, look at it, recognize the work it's going to take, and genuinely, honestly ask yourself, am I willing to commit to this laundry list of items. Because once you see it on a page, you're like, crap, this is real now. I have a plan. Is this something I actually want to pursue? Because we can talk all day about ideas. I want to do this. I want to do that. Once you actually have a plan in front of you, it's like, this thing's real.
This is real.
This is real. Do I want to actually pursue this? Write a time frame too of what you think it'll roughly take. And so that this way, you know what you're getting yourself into. Yeah, there's going to be, speed bumps along the road, surprises, but for the majority of the time, you're going to know this is a 6-month project, 8-month project, 12-month project. And you really need to decide, is this something that I'm willing to do? So when it takes 6-8 months and you knew it was going to take that time frame, when you're in month 3, you can't complain because you knew what you signed up for.
Yeah.
So it's great to have that game plan.
And the first version of anything that you do, it's going to suck.
Yep.
It is not going to be a masterpiece. And that is just the best advice that I've got and I've received from a lot of people in the entertainment industry, is that the first draft of a script, the first rehearsal of preparing for a TV show or a play, it is not going to look pretty. But you got to start somewhere. And like we were talking about, start with the end in mind. Have a vision board, have whatever that end goal looks like, and connect to the feeling of what it's going to feel like once it is finished, and have that present so that you're reminded every day of why you are doing the mundane things that after 3, 4, or 5 months, when you're feeling like wanting to give up, just having that reminder and the visual cues. That's why I love vision boards. Just having these pictures of my dream house, my dream movies, my dream whatever it is that I want to fulfill on. I actually have some sayings up in my bedroom where I wake up every morning, and I have a poster board that says, "I am a movie star." And this may sound cheesy, but this is something that Wendy Spiller-Reese, who I had on Coffee with Colin a few weeks ago, where she taught me the power of manifestation, the law of attraction. By planting these seeds into your subconscious, you are actually helping to rewire your brain and having your brain shift consciously from a lot of these subconscious, unconscious belief systems that essentially influence our operating system, and a lot of the times create the reasons why we self-sabotage. Do you believe in manifestation, law of attraction, all this sort of the undercurrent of creating something out of nothing?
It depends how you label it. I'm sure there's truth to a lot of it. I don't label it the manifestation and all this stuff. I get the concept. It's like you create the life you want. So for sure, I get that. Yeah. But yeah, everything requires energy, or everything requires planning, everything requires focus. But yeah, your mind will determine everything. How you think, how you talk to yourself. And if you want true fulfillment, success, you have to dig deep, find out who you are, what you want, what does success look like to you, because success to you is completely different than what success looks like to someone else. And yeah, knowing yourself to me is true freedom.
When you started doing this inner work of self-exploration, and was it, I think, Socrates that you talk about in your course, that an unexamined life is not worth living?
Yep.
What was it? Have you always been curious about introspectively looking at who you are and why we are here, and asking some of these deeper questions that maybe some people, quite a few people, may not really be consciously thinking about?
Yeah. So by nature, I'm an analytical thinker. I can't turn my brain off if I wanted to. I analyze everything. But more importantly, I analyze myself. And throughout the years, I pay attention. I pay attention to, why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? And then I was introduced into the world of therapy. I'm a huge therapy proponent. I've been to therapy on and off for probably upwards of 10 years. I've grown tremendously as a person because of that. But honestly, I feel like I get more out of life by knowing myself better, by healing the past, healing past traumas, healing past mindsets based on those traumas. And yeah, I get so much more out of myself. When I'm out of the way, I'm actually able to help people more, and genuinely help people. Like, there might be times where people want to help someone else, but inside they really don't want to. But that's what a good human is supposed to do. And yeah, a lot of that is our past traumas and what's holding us back in life. So yeah, I dig deep all the time, even if I don't want to.
So speaking of trauma, it's and I've been to therapy myself, incredibly effective. And especially as a guy, growing up, men were not really necessarily encouraged as much to express our true feelings and our
Yeah.
authentic emotions. So we, as men, tend to bottle things up. And I found acting class incredibly therapeutic and cathartic with tapping into some of these buried emotions that I was holding on to. And, 9/11 was just yesterday. And what I realized through some of my therapy was that when we experience trauma and traumatic experiences, our body has a way of protecting itself by subconsciously compartmentalizing this trauma so
Yeah.
that we're not having to experience it on an ongoing basis, but it is still there. And after I was living across the street from the World Trade Center, and after the towers fell down, it was a few weeks before I could get back into my apartment, and just going back down there, my windows were blown in, and
Okay.
it just felt, violating, that my home was destroyed. Just debris and glass and metal beams and piece of carpeting from the World Trade Center went to my window, and I could actually look down into the actual pits where the towers fell into, and just seeing all the first responders there, just bravely, courageously digging through all of that rubble, just had a profound effect on me. And it wasn't until my parents encouraged me to come back to Chicago. And in a way, I didn't want to leave because I felt like, well, this is my city and I don't want to leave. But after I decided, okay, I was going to come home, it was about a month later. And up until that point, I felt like I was fine. I felt like, all right, I'm good. I'm fine. I'm grateful to be alive. And it wasn't until I got into a taxi and drove through the Holland Tunnel and got onto the other side into New Jersey, when I was driving down the New Jersey Turnpike and looked over at Manhattan and saw the smoke coming out of the southern tip of Manhattan. That's when my emotions started to come up. And by the time I got to the airport, I checked in and walked through the terminal, sat down in a restaurant, and just started bawling. I couldn't stop crying. It made me realize that we can tend to hold on to a lot of trauma. And what really is effective with that is having a safe space to be able to communicate and have someone ask questions that help you tap into some of these experiences. Of course, you want to do it with someone who's licensed and someone who knows what they're doing, especially when it comes to trauma. But I did go see a therapist when I was here in Chicago, and she really helped me tap into some of those traumatic experiences. So it is incredibly important that we learn how to communicate effectively for that reason as well. And what I liked about what you talked about in your course was that when we are in personal relationships with people or in professional relationships and we offend them, you talk about how a framework for an apology and how to communicate effectively with someone so that they truly understand, not just understand, but feel that you are sorry for having made that mistake and that you actually take responsibility for it. Can you share with us how that got into your course and why learning how to communicate effectively when it comes to apologizing, why that is so important?
Yeah. Hurting someone and offending someone can ruin connection, and that's what communication is all about. So in order to rekindle that, there needs to be a mending, but a proper mending. You can't just say, my bad, sorry, or you know how I am, this is just who I am, or don't be so sensitive. That ruins relationships. So the only way to properly mend a relationship, and it's not guaranteed because the other person can still be so hurt by what took place, they don't want to rekindle the relationship. But yeah, a genuine, heartfelt apology goes so long and goes so far. It's Honestly, in my experience, like there's not much you can do that a genuine apology won't help. Not, again, solve. That's up to the other person. But
Mhm.
yeah, just a genuine apology. The parts of a genuine apology are addressing what took place. So not ignoring it as if it never happened. Taking responsibility, and that's the biggest part for what you did. And you never want to apologize. I'm sorry you felt that way. You're not talking on someone's behalf when you're apologizing. You're talking about yourself. Own what you did, apologize, seek amends, say, I'm sorry for what I did. I understand how you must have felt in this situation. I truly apologize. I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do to rectify my wrong? And that's huge. Like people want to know, people want to be acknowledged. So if somebody's hurt, you need to acknowledge that hurt. Because if you ignore it, you're basically ignoring the person and saying, I hurt you and I don't care. And your relationship's done after that. But again, if it's a relationship you want to save and actually move forward with, you have to mend that relationship. So acknowledge, I hurt you and I messed up. And a big part of that, which a lot of people don't want to do, it's vulnerability. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable. When you're wrong, it's very uncomfortable. It should be. The whole purpose of an uncomfortable apology is so you feel like crap, so you don't do it again. But if you don't allow yourself to feel those crappy feelings, then you're not able to experience the full gravity of what you did. Yes, it sucks, but it's just a moment. And in that moment can lead to such a more beautiful relationship after that point. But yeah, so many people are afraid to be weak, afraid to be vulnerable because it's painful. Guess what? Life is painful. So at least a genuine apology is pain with a purpose. I'm going to be hurt right now. I'm going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to be vulnerable. It's going to suck. But after this conversation, my goal is to mend this relationship and have that much better of a relationship going forward.
And when it comes to acknowledging that you've hurt someone, obviously it needs to be initiated by someone who's been hurt. I think it's excuse me, difficult for us sometimes to go to someone and say, listen, I need to talk to you. You hurt me. You crossed the line. What advice would you give to someone who may be a little leery or lacking the courage or the I guess the vulnerability to go to someone and say, you hurt me and I need to talk about this because this is something that that matters to me. I think a lot of people are afraid to actually go to someone and let them know that they've actually been hurt. What advice would you give for someone in that situation?
Yeah, I would say that approaching someone who hurt you is more for you than it is for them. You cannot control another person's actions. You don't know how they're going to respond to it. They might brush you off. They might say, stop being so sensitive. But there's power in just speaking that and getting that off your chest. If they don't respond the best way, if they don't respect your feelings, that sucks. You can't control that. But even for yourself, so much relief comes from getting that off your chest and just saying, you hurt me. Again, regardless of how they respond to that, you just acknowledging your own feelings and pain to the person that caused it. It's powerful and it's for yourself. You don't need someone else to acknowledge it. It's great if they acknowledge it. It's great if they want to seek amends. But it's more for you because it just feels good to speak up on your own behalf and to say my feelings were hurt in this moment because of what you did. Even if they don't want to rectify the relationship, you just feel that much better acknowledging it and being honest with yourself, because the opposite is keeping it to yourself. And then it turns into bitterness, turns into anger. And at the end of the day, you're the only one who suffers from it. You can have a person who hurt you 10 years ago. They don't even remember you, but you remember them and you're constantly thinking about it. You have this bitterness and anger. All those emotions can lead to physical ailments too. And at the end of the day, you're only hurting yourself. So set yourself free by telling them what they did. However they respond is how they respond, but you feel better acknowledging it.
Because people usually know when they've hurt you. And if you don't say anything, then they have the tendency to just keep doing it. And they tend to then just have a lack of respect for you. And until you actually speak up and just let people know that this is something that you are not cool with, they're going to keep doing it. And you're actually doing a disservice, not only, like Marcus was saying, to yourself, but to the relationship in general. And like Marcus said, it may be difficult and it may be uncomfortable, but the alternative, as Marcus was saying, is a worse situation where you're only going to be doing yourself more harm, where it can manifest itself into health issues, mental issues, and that in the long term is way worse than you having the courage to speak up and say what it is that you want to let the person know, that whatever that line is that they crossed. Do you actually do consulting with clients, like one-on-one coaching for communication and helping them work through some of maybe these communication issues? And do you do it for personal and professional reasons?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. I love it. Again, like there's a good amount of therapy that kind of goes along. I'm not a therapist. I'm not calling it therapy, but what I'm saying is who we are is a big part of our communication. Again, what's inside of you comes out of you. If you don't like what's coming out of you, you got to focus on the inside. So again, that concept that I talk about instead of addressing the symptoms, we heal the disease. So instead of, oh, I don't know how to speak, I get shy here. Well, let's take a step back and dig a little deeper. Well, why are you shy?
Yeah.
What narrative is in your head that's making you doubt yourself? Was there someone in your life that told you something negative and you chose to believe them? Is there a trauma that's, unresolved? You talked about earlier about like using your voice and from your chest. And a big part of that, honestly, is confidence. Your confidence will help you fully utilize your voice because you know when to speak up. If you are not confident, you got to talk a little lower. You're kind of shy and in the background, and you kind of get, people pass over you. But yeah, you got to dig deep. Because at the end of the day, our communication tactics are really secondary. They are a result of who we are. And again, if we don't like what we're seeing, we got to take a step back and dig deep into who we are. Because honestly, my communication has gotten so much better throughout my years of therapy, getting to know myself, getting healed, becoming more confident. And yeah, honestly, what really happens is therapy and cleaning myself out really just clears my mind to focus on so much better things. Like there's a huge difference of being here. And what I mean by here is actually present in this moment instead of being in here all the time. We can get, how many times have you been driving and you zone out and you're at your destination and don't even know how the heck you got there?
Yeah.
So we can get lost in here, and this isn't the real world. This is our world. Some people want to get stuck in here because it's safe and they can control it, but it's not the real world. So the less you have inside of you, as far as like garbage wise, past trauma, the more you can be filled with good things, the more you're able to focus. Like right here, I'm in this moment. I'm looking at Colin. I'm looking at this screen. Like I am here. I'm not in my mind thinking about something that's going to happen later. Again, that took time. True healing takes time, but I was willing to dig deep. I was willing to have the uncomfortable conversations. I was willing to pay attention to those demons that were haunting me for so long. And it was tough. I will never let anyone know that, therapy is a cakewalk and you'll get through and you're going to be this great person. Like therapy is one of the toughest things you can do. Tough people face their emotions. Us as humans, we are logical as well as emotional. To lean to either side, in my opinion, we're off balance. I feel like logic and emotions should complement one another. So yes, utilize your heart, use your brain too, because your heart can lead you astray sometimes. Yes, something makes sense logically, but you may need to have your heart involved with the decision. Something may not make sense so much logically, but your heart's involved. You want to help somebody. It's a balance of the two.
Another thing I loved what you talked about in your TED Talk was humility. And I think that is a key ingredient that is missing in a lot of conversations, personally, and also what we see in the news. You talk about how it's important to come to a conversation or with your communication from a perspective of realizing that you don't know everything and that there's maybe something to learn by having a conversation. Can you talk a little bit about why humility is so important.
Yeah, I feel like humility joins people and pride tears them apart. And humility is needed because, like I said, like you just said, that you can always be wrong. And when you know you can always be wrong, you can still present things confidently, but you're willing to listen to other people. You're willing to listen to opposing things. How many things in your life right now are wrong, but at one point in time you thought were right?
Right.
Like, we are forever growing. We should be forever students. Nobody will ever achieve maximum knowledge and wisdom and experiences. We all have things we can learn from one another, and that's what creates connection. It's talking, it's listening, it's sharing thoughts and ideas and missions and visions, and that's all what communication is about, is connecting. And pride will always damage relationships. So humility means that it's not always about me too. I'm willing to share the conversation, share the stage, share the microphone. I will shut up and listen while you talk. Back and forth, round and round we go. I'm willing to listen to your opinions, even if I feel that they may be wrong, but I'm willing to pause and reflect, because I've been wrong so many times. I know this could be another one of those situations. So let me pause and think about what the person is saying, as opposed to, no, I'm right, this and that. And honestly, again, digging deep, that can be rooted in, past trauma. There could be a parent or a parental figure that always told somebody they were wrong, or were very verbally abusive. Mm-hmm. So therefore, in their adulthood, nobody's going to tell me I'm wrong. I'm the man. I'm the woman. Like, exactly. I'm right even when I'm wrong. And that's true. Like, again, you have to dig deep, because everything, all our behaviors and stuff, it really is just secondary. There's so much behind it. And again, if you want better results, you have to do better and dig better inside.
Yeah, I love that. And what I liked, so Renee Strickland wrote here, when it comes to conversation and maybe having some of these uncomfortable conversations with people that maybe have hurt you and maybe didn't express a whole lot of humility, what Renee says she likes to do is she likes to write it all out. That is her acknowledgement. I think that's a great way to acknowledge the feelings that you're having. I usually sort out what I still want to have in a conversation. And sometimes I found that going through the process of just writing a letter is simply enough without even needing to send it. And that's why some great piece of advice that I've received as well is never communicate when you are emotionally triggered. And there's so many times when we just want to send that text message or that email when we're like fired up. And trust me, I've been there, and I write it and I'm like, okay, now I'm just going to let it sit, go for a walk. Yeah. And I come back and I'm like, oh my God, I'm glad I did not send that. Like, it would have made things 20,000 times worse.
Go for a walk.
Yes. And in terms of being triggered and energy with communication, you talk about in your course as well that communication, and I've heard this statistic as well, is that essentially communication is only roughly 7% verbal. So the other 93% is how we show up and the way in which we communicate. So body language, posture, facial expressions. Talk to us a little bit about energy in communication, why that's so important. And have you ever talked about or analyzed or talked to your clients about the differences in bringing male and female energy to communication?
No, that's something interesting I can look into for sure. Yeah. Back to the comment about communication. The actual words that come out of your mouth only account for 7% of communication, which is ridiculous in my opinion. That's crazy. That means that you can deliver a message up to 93% efficiency without ever opening your mouth.
Yes.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And usually people think of communication, they think, oh, talking. And that's the minority when it comes to it. So you can say the right words, but you can have an attitude. You can be hunched over. You can be here looking at your watch, looking around the room. You're like, oh yeah, that's so great. Thank you so much for talking. I appreciate your feedback. Like, the words are nice. You're like, yeah, Colin, thank you for having me on your show. I'm so excited to be here. It's just such a blessing and an honor. The words sound right, but the manner in which they're delivered, it's not believable.
Yeah, Marcus, your TED Talk was awesome.
Sweet.
And you're an incredible individual. And I want to be best friends with you because you're just an awesome guy.
I believe you.
It's great communication.
Thank you.
Yeah. Super exciting. It's great. This is all the fun stuff that we practice in acting class as well. Just learning how to apply energy and intention with the words. And just even today in my communications class, we were talking about this very same thing. And we do what's called a repetition exercise. It's called a Meisner technique, where we just do a repetition of a certain phrase where you don't have to necessarily remember the words. So let's say the phrase is, am I a stranger? I would say, am I a stranger? You would repeat, are you a stranger? Am I a stranger? And so you start to introduce different types of energies into it. And then the person has to respond to the energy that you're bringing to that question. And you bounce back like ping pong. And it essentially helps people understand it's more about the energy and reading each other's body language and facial expressions with regards to the communication, and not so much the actual words themselves.
Yep.
And once you start to learn some of this stuff and start to master some of these insights and techniques of multi-layered communication becomes a lot more fun. You feel a lot more confident with it, and you feel empowered to be able to say the things that you really, truly have been wanting to say. And that being said, for anyone out there, including myself, Marcus, who wants to do a TED Talk, can you tell us how that process was? Was that nerve-wracking for you? What is the application process like? How did you get selected? What was that all like?
So the reason I got the TED Talk was the grace of God. So the way I got the TED Talk was, it was actually someone else's talk. And it was actually a restaurant owner that I was an assistant for at the time, and he overbooked his schedule. And he let the folks know, he's like, I'm sorry, I overbooked, I can't make it. And they wrote back, do you know someone who can replace you?
Oh, wow.
And he asked me, and I said, absolutely. Yeah. So,
Wow.
So traditionally people have months to prepare for a TED Talk. I was given 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh. You nailed it.
I wrote that and memorized it in
Really?
2 weeks. Yes. So it was crazy though, because even though I memorized the entirety of the script, I kept messing up the parts and the pieces. Like, I can't do this in order. I'm about to go on stage. And God bless my mother. She was like, didn't they mention something about like having a screen in the background? I was like, yes. So for those who watch my TED Talk, and if you see me looking in the back and having like a half a second pause, it's because the outline of my speech was in the background on a huge screen that kept me focused and on target. Yeah. But yeah, it was somebody else's talk, and I just happened to get it and blew it out the water.
That's amazing. See, you manifested it.
Yeah,
or you invited it. You prayed for it. The man upstairs, the universe, whatever you want to call it, delivered it because it was in your consciousness. This has been great, man. I hope you guys have gotten a lot of great value out of this conversation. If there's anything else that you guys want to know, any questions you may have, feel free to type it into the chat here. Marcus, is there anything else with regards to offering insight to anyone out there who's possibly maybe feeling like they have something to say? They know that they've got value, but they're just maybe feeling a little insecure or lacking the courage to be able to get up in front of an audience, or in front of even just doing Facebook Lives, Instagram Lives. Any insight you can offer to anyone out there who's needing to hear it?
Sure. I think one of the most powerful questions we can ask ourselves is why. And it's really interesting because we get annoyed when children say why. We actually discourage children after a while. It's like, stop asking me questions. But that's how we learn. So when it comes to yourself, if you recognize your behaviors, ask yourself, why? Why do I act this way? Why do I respond this certain way? Why do I get nervous anytime a conversation happens? Why don't I speak up when I know I have something of value to add to a conversation? That's literally step one, because you you can't fix a problem until you first recognize the problem. So you have to figure out what's going on with me, what's going on in my mind, what's going on in my heart, what's going on based on my past experiences that is causing me to act this way. And then, like I said, take a step backwards and go deeper, find out the root cause of your behavior and why it's doing what you're doing. Because if you're just focusing on the symptoms, it's like masking the problem. At the end of the day, I feel like the real you always comes out, no matter how much you want to pretend or fit the role. So yeah, I mean, number one as well, everybody feels it. You are not alone. Everybody gets anxious every now and then. Everyone gets fearful. We get afraid. We try something new. There's a little bit of doubt. We don't know if it's going to work out. Nothing is safe at the end of the day. There are no guarantees in life. If you want something, go after it. Life is super short. My goal is to maximize my creative output in this life. I have a lot of things that I've done. I have tons more things that I want to do and will do, because I recognize that, again, like I said before, with fear doesn't necessarily go away. I just find things that are more powerful than fear. So you need to find things that are more powerful than fear in your life. What's more powerful? Maybe it is providing for your family. Maybe it's achieving a dream that a parent had for you. There's tons of things. You know the reason that motivates you. You know your goal, something that you want to accomplish. You have to find out what your goal is and use that as your motivation and continually remind yourself, like Colin said, put together a vision board, get pictures, write things, whatever you want. But yeah, and also, this is huge too, be kind to yourself. Seriously, like, you're a human, you're gonna mess up. We all have weaknesses. Like, if people don't acknowledge their weaknesses, they're lying, and clearly dealing with things to the point where they can't acknowledge their own mistakes. But it's literally part of life. None of us are going to get out of it alive. That's the reality. So, just enjoy life while you can. Make the best version of yourself. Try to help a few people along the way. But please, please, please do not let fear hold you back. And again, for me personally, I wouldn't say get rid of fear. Find something in your life that's more motivational and more powerful than fear.
Love that. What advice would you give your younger self?
Holy cow, that's a heavy question. I would say keep going. Because there's a lot of times I wanted to quit. Life has gotten very heavy for me at different times. And keep going. I'm not alone. It's funny because that's actually part of my motivation. I want to help people because I want to be the person for people that I wish I had in my life. When I needed it. Even again, going back to therapy, therapy wasn't something that my family knew. It's not like, hey mom, hey dad, what was your therapy experience like? So you can guide me down the path. Brand new. I didn't know other people in therapy. So it was a new venture. I didn't know what was going to happen. And for me, the hardest thing is fighting a fight or running a race when you can't see the finish line. Not only that, you don't even know if a finish line exists. And I was in the thick of it, deep in therapy. All my crap was coming out, and the grace of God got me through it, honestly, because it's really easy. It's really easy to quit. Yeah, but there's so much more out there.
Well, you're doing a lot of great stuff, Marcus. I'm glad you didn't quit.
Yes.
And I'm glad you didn't quit as well, because you've got to answer 6 very important questions right now. Some very important questions brought to you by Particular, ladies and gentlemen. Marcus, thank you for all this insight and knowledge. And we're about to get into the fun portion of the interview. Not that this first part hasn't been fun, but this part is brought to you again by Particular. It is the app that allows you to curate your favorite movies, and it pops up suggestions based on your swiping pattern, left or right. It's kind of like Tinder meeting IMDb. And my buddy Todd Courtney created this. So go to Google Play Store or the Apple iPhone Store and download Particular to be able to find your favorite movies. And then also, if you want to check out movies that I've been in, Marcus, you've actually been in some movies yourself, right?
Independent films.
Independent films, yeah.
Yes.
So you can go in there and type in your favorite actor, like Marcus Velazquez, and it should pop out all the movies and projects that whatever your favorite actor has been in. And then you can click on it and it will actually display the platform where you can actually watch it. Because the main thrust behind this whole platform was people would ask me where's my movie playing? And as actors, we never know what platforms, especially with all the 4,000 different channels out there. So this is a quick and easy way for you to be able to find the movies and TV shows that you love the most, where you can watch them. So that being said, Marcus, first question in the particular pick 6 is, what is your favorite movie of all time?
So the first thing that comes to mind is the movie Gladiator.
Yes,
awesome film.
That's my favorite movie.
We did not plan that.
We did not plan this. And why, Marcus? What connected you to Gladiator?
There was just a lot of emotions in that movie. I feel like it kind of hit everything. You had the action aspect with the gladiators fighting. You had a love interest. You had a bad guy. You had the main character who obviously suffered and lost. Actually, I'm gonna spoil it. If you haven't seen it by now, shame on you. It's been out for a while.
Yes.
The main character, loses his wife and daughter. So to see him,
wife and son.
is it the son?
Yeah.
Oh, what's your favorite movie?
Yeah.
But to overcome that, and end up on top, I think is beautiful. So yeah, there was tons of emotions. I cry every single time I watch that dang movie. The freaking scene where he's rubbing his hand across
the wheat.
Oh,
yes. Yeah. They're actually working on a sequel to Gladiator.
No way.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. So can't wait for that. Second question is, what was your favorite movie growing up as a kid?
The first one that comes to mind would be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
All right.
I'm probably showing my age with that one. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you love so much about Teenage Mutant?
They were fun. They knew karate. I actually was taking karate as a kid too. So I remember as soon as those credits hit after the movie, I'm practicing my moves. I want to be like Michelangelo, eat some pizza. Yeah, and honestly, I had just about every Ninja Turtles toy you could possibly have, down to the blimp. I had the Ninja Turtle blimp hanging in my room as a kid.
Wow.
So yeah,
Awesome.
Big fan.
What is your favorite romantic comedy?
I don't know if it's my favorite, but the first one that comes to mind is The Breakup with Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn. I think that's a great movie. Very
Super funny.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
That's a good one.
A lot of communication breakdown in that movie.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yep. I'd be happy to counsel them.
What's your favorite comedy?
The first one that comes to mind is Dumb and Dumber. I feel like that's a classic.
So good.
Yes.
So good.
Yes.
And who is your favorite actor or male character in a movie?
So I feel like that's changed over time, but most recently I would say it's Gerard Butler. In particular, a film I was telling you about, which is Law Abiding Citizens. Such a good movie with Jamie Foxx as well. Yeah, it's deep, it's intense. I personally like movies that make me think. I told you I'm an analytical thinker. I couldn't fight it if I wanted to. So like I love twists and turns. I love trying to figure out the ending. Yeah, that movie was excellent.
So in terms of communication, this is what I talk about. When you walk into a room, what type of energy do you bring into a room? Obviously, we talked today about the 93% of our communication is how we show up and the way in which we communicate. Speaking of Gerard Butler, what type of energy would you say he brings to the screen into his projects? What does he communicate to you when he's on screen?
Honestly, the first thing that pops in my mind is confidence. Like, he knows who he is. He knows what he's there for. He knows his mission. Get out of his way.
That communicates a lot.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to start being aware. And like what Marcus was talking about earlier is know thyself. Think about the energy that you bring into a room and what type of energy are you filling the space with? Is it the energy of how can I be of service to the people in this room? How can I bring abundance and love to this room? Or do you walk into a room feeling like you are worried about what people think of you and worried about people judging you? That's the type of energy that is going to repel people, because people don't like that insecure, needy energy. And so it's important to be aware of this, because no matter what comes out of your mouth, if you're showing up into a room with that type of energy. And this is what I learned from going into 2,000 different auditions,
Holy cow.
casting directors, and producers giving feedback on how actors walk into the room. It's really interesting, just listening and actually being on the other side of this, because I've been on the casting process a couple of times as well. And you can tell within the first few seconds of someone walking into a room, if they believe in themselves, if they have confidence, or if they are walking into the room with this energy of, I hope they like me. I hope I don't screw up.
Yep.
I hope this is like, is this okay that I'm in here, and apologizing.
No one will believe in you if you don't believe in you.
Very well said. And last question is, who is your favorite actress or female character?
Again, first one that comes to mind would be Scarlett Johansson. Actually, probably my favorite movie of hers would be Lucy. Have you seen Lucy?
Is that where she AI, like an artificial intelligence?
No, she takes some kind of like chemical compound that was like created in the lab, and it helps her use 100% of her brain.
Oh,
so
okay.
good. So good. Yes.
Okay. I'm thinking of, she played the voice in a movie with
Joaquin yes,
Phoenix.
That was a sad movie.
Yeah, where she was like this artificial intelligence, like his girlfriend, but just just this voice of that was.
And I'm afraid we're heading in that direction.
Yeah, we are heading in that direction. Crazy. Well, Marcus, thank you again so much for being here, for your time.
Thanks for having me.
You guys definitely have to check out Marcus's TED Talk. Again, the name of the TED Talk is
The Art of Effective Communication. And
you can check out Marcus on Instagram. He's got 2 different profiles.
Yeah, so my personal one is Mr. Marcus Alexander. So Mr. is just MR. So Mr. Marcus Alexander. And then my business profile is Be a Better Communicator. And
he's got his course. You can actually pick it up. It's really, it's not that expensive at all. It's only $150.
Yeah, 149, yeah.
So definitely go check that out. It's got a lot of great modules and a lot of really insightful, deeper dive into what we talked about today. And it'll give you an idea of what a course could look like if you wanted to put one together. And that can be found on my website, if you don't mind the plug. Yeah, go for it. Which is beabettercommunicator.com. Awesome. And before we leave, Marcus, I'd like to ask my guests one last question. What inspires you? Personally, I would say my relationship with Jesus. That's what gets me going. Because he's given me purpose, and without him, I wouldn't have that purpose. So I live and breathe because he allows me to, and I want to maximize the life he's given me. Awesome. Very cool. And again, anyone out there who's looking to get some help, some coaching with communication, reach out to Marcus, and feel free to, again, watch his TED Talk. It's really great. Again, thanks for your time. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. Thank you all for being here for another episode of Coffee with Colin. I love doing this because obviously you get to have great conversations with amazing people. And this wouldn't mean anything if it wasn't for you guys out there checking this out. So I appreciate it. Again, if you are out there and like this, feel free to like and share. Obviously, love your help and support with spreading what I'm doing. Subscribe to the channel. And we will see you next time. All right. Take care. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you soon.